name is Seeta Shah, and I'm the Affordable Housing Specialist at FSD Kenya, based in Nairobi. I will describe the blockages in the formal housing value chain that are evident in the Kenyan context, despite the government priority and commitment towards housing as a national agenda. To recap, the housing value chain is long and complex and requires several actors to work in unison, an injection of significant capital at different points along the value chain. As affordable housing cannot be delivered purely by market forces, otherwise it would be, some sort of support is required. What are the sources of capital for housing, and why are developers in Kenya finding it hard to access such capital? The first is an upfront subsidy from the government. This was proposed in Kenya as a mandatory housing tax which would be used to purchase units developed by the market. There was public opposition to the tax, and the National Housing Fund did not materialize as envisaged. While I'm a supporter of such taxes, we can see from the example given here that a similar tax and housing fund in Nigeria did not achieve its intended objectives and was the basis to the public objection in Kenya. Local capital sources in Kenya, like banks and pension funds, are flush with capital, but they resist investing in housing which carries risk and administrative complexity compared to safer investment like government paper, which I will illustrate in the next slide. Development finance institutions are often looked upon to provide capital for housing. However, DFIs require very large ticket sizes and lend in hard currency, and therefore their capital is hard to access even for promising local developers. Therefore, as we can see, in Kenya, there's limited capital available for housing construction, save for equity from landowners and purchase installments from home buyers, which carries risk as there's limited consumer protection. All investors in Kenya, whether debt or equity, will be benchmarking returns and the risk from housing versus investing in government paper. This slide shows the investment in government paper by the top 8 banks, which ranges from between 19% to 38% of the balance sheet as of December 2021. With government bonds now providing up to 13% tax-free and risk-free returns and large ticket sizes, it is a safer investment option for capital. Governments across the world often provide tax incentives to stimulate affordable housing markets. These are also subsidies, as they are foregone tax revenues, but do not require cash injection upfront. Well-designed tax incentives should result in medium and long-term multiplier impacts. When more housing units and services are delivered, more inputs are used, more labor is used, and the taxable base grows. Economies of scale allow delivery at lower prices, deepening affordability. While Kenya has several tax incentives to support the demand and supply side of formal housing, these have been extremely difficult to access in practice. Let's look at why. The first incentive is a stamp duty exemption on first-time home buyers. Although enacted in 2017, it has not been operationalized as there is an inability to define who qualifies as a first-time home buyer. An alternative approach could be to provide the stamp duty exemption on all new units availed at affordable prices. While such an incentive would benefit investors as well as first-time home buyers, at least it would benefit some time home buyers versus none, and support the creation of an affordable rental housing stock. The second incentive allows a pension contributor to withdraw up to 40% of their contributions to invest into housing. Again, this law is yet to be operationalized as there's a lack of clarity on whether an individual can simultaneously borrow for the balance of the home price in form of a mortgage. Further, the regulations require most of the pension amount withdrawn to be taxed, which undermines the incentive completely. The key supply-side incentives are a 16% VAT exemption on input materials, which result in a lower housing unit price. This has been difficult to operationalize as the approvals are required not only on the project level, but for every performer on a monthly basis. And the delivery price expected by government is unfeasible when land cost and finance cost are included. There is also a corporate tax reduction by half, which requires developers to start and finish a project in 1 year. But this has not been possible to achieve given the very long regulatory processes. FSD Kenya has launched a partnership with State Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Kenya Property Developers Association to support 12 projects to apply for these supply-side incentives. It requires participating developers to be willing to share data on delivery cost and time to enable better policy design. This is an illustration of a 1,500-unit housing development on well-located land in a secondary town near Nairobi, using the Open Access Initiative launched by FSD and its partners. It shows the 9% saving to the bottom line if a developer can access the VAT exemption. However, it also shows the difficulty of achieving an all-in delivery price of 50,000 Kenya shillings per square meter, which is the current government requirement. In addition to financing challenges, there's still a need for a more enabling environment. In 2017, the State Department created a one-stop shop to assist developers with approvals. However, as seen here, developers still require around 19 different approvals from different agencies at county and national government level. Further, Kenya is instituting electronic land information management systems onto an RD-SASA platform and moving land registration from a multitude of different regimes to one regime. While this is a very necessary long-term step, the transition period impedes affordable housing delivery as banks cannot charge the property title as security for mortgages and construction finance. This is greatly affecting the impact of the much-awaited Kenya Mortgage Refinance Corporation. In conclusion, despite a committed government and other stakeholders, it is clear that well-intended government policies have been difficult to implement. The key lesson is, as there's limited upfront funding for housing, the one option governments have are tax incentives. However, such incentives should be provided in a simple manner that can be easily implemented to achieve the national objective. After a few years of successful take-up, which should result in greater delivery and scale, promoting affordability, the incentives can be redesigned to meet the new market realities. Further, the coordination and transparency between different government agencies required to enable affordable housing delivery is much deeper than expected. This needs to be resolved as a prerequisite for finance to flow into the affordable housing value chain. The Open Access Initiative is a key tool to understanding these realities accurately and to assist in influencing good policy design.